Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Legion video. So, could Legion save World of Warcraft? World of Warcraft sub-numbers have been declining since Cataclysm, and hell, even if you look at search trends, you see that same decline in interest be reflected. Now, this video isn't here to stamp all over the game, it's about how Legion could change that, or what it could do to change that. First of all, what do we say when we say save World of Warcraft? Well, the game obviously isn't dying. Most companies would kill to have a user base that large, but that is a user base that is on a downward trend as far as numbers go. The question that we're asking is whether Legion can save Warcraft from that downward trend that has been happening. Let's quickly cover that downward trend and look at some of the main reasons behind it. So Cataclysm gutted much of the gameplay that kind of mid-tier players were used to in Wrath without finding a sufficient replacement in the form of removing the ICC 10 difficulty level. They then had a chunky enough content route, which led into an expansion with MoP that had a very divisive theme that many players indeed bounced off. This led to sub-numbers falling massively. However, in spite of people's initial reactions to Mists, it actually did manage to retain players pretty decently with its patch cycle, until the content drought of Siege of Orgrimmar, which led to more players leaving the game, and then we had Warlords, which had a massive subscriber uptick due to its initially strong theme and well-executed marketing, but its patch content was very lacking, and players responded by leaving in droves. Design changes aside, I think that the larger reasons for the game's falling subscriber numbers are easily identifiable. They misjudged how much players would like the aesthetic of somewhere that they would be spending 2+ years in, and then they followed that up with not really delivering much content. With all of this in mind, let's talk about Legion. Can it save Warcraft from this entire downward trend? Let's start off with what Warlords did pretty well: the launch, the marketing, and the theme. Well, not the literal launch, but thematically, Warlords was a shift away from the more explorative and peaceful sort of land of Pandaria into one that's wholly about war. Not only was this a play on nostalgia with the continent of Draenor, but it's a theme that players, I think, evidently did crave. I'm of the opinion that they have actually managed to do something similar, perhaps even better, with Legion. Looking at the actual world of Legion, you can see its design is very much rooted in the kind of classic Azeroth look, with design traces that go back to Wrath Vanilla and Warcraft 3. It's also dealing with a pretty iconic foe from past expansions and games, and then of course we have Illidan, another major selling point for players with an interest in the franchise. And as much as it is easy to be cynical about their reasons for including Illidan, we've got to remember that his run in the Burning Crusade left a lot to be desired. Not only was it short, but it was also partially character breaking. Broad strokes, you can see that Legion has quite a few strong hooks. It's got a classic Blizzard world, that's paired with enemies and heroes that probably will resonate with players. The markings of another Warlords of Draenor style launch success are there. However, it is going to be an uphill battle after their handling of Warlords of Draenor, as I can see people reasonably having a perspective of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, when it comes to Blizzard and their support for their games. Still, the initial stuff with Legion does actually look quite good. It's also front-loaded with quite a lot of great content. There are a good number of one-off kind of unique quest chains like covering Illidan and a few other things outside of the regular leveling zones that are really fantastic. There's the Class Order halls, the artifact quests, pretty strong zones as well. Up front, it's got quite a lot of good quality content. I actually think that Impressions will be very good for Legion insofar as its initial content goes. Warlords of Draenor, though, is proof that having a successful launch does not mean that the expansion will be successful. When you look at the patch cycle of Warlords, it's quite clear that it failed on nearly every level apart from the raid content that it delivered. For players who want to log in every day and chip away at character progression, and, if they weren't raiding, it was a case of LFR, do the same 6 quests into Nan Jungle, or do those dungeons they'd already been doing for 8 months prior to patch 6.2. Legion is going to have to perform well in its post-launch content so that it doesn't repeat this problem. One of the best examples of a post-launch strategy working well, in spite of some unfavorable conditions, is Mists of Pandaria. From September 2012 to June 2013, the game fell from 10 million subs down to 7.7 million. From that June to the following March, the game's sub numbers went down a net of 100k, though at one point they actually had a quarter where they rose by 200k. Now, this period of stability and a little bit of growth, well, not net, but, it did pretty well, comes off the back of patch 5.2 and includes the release of patch 5.3 and 5.4. Simply put, there was content there for players to engage with, and by the time the content droughts happened, they had added enough content to the expansion to give it longevity, unlike Warlords, which entered a content drought with a comparatively small amount of patch content. So, looking forward to Legion, what can we expect? Well, Blizzard have said that they plan on a patch cycle that's quite similar to MoP, and they have indeed said they want to deliver 3 raid tiers this expansion. So, that would be the launch tier of Emerald Nightmare and Suramar, another tier in, I assume, patch 7.2, and then a final raid tier in what I presume is patch 7.4. Assuming these patches have a decent amount of content, we already have proof that player retention, even growth, is possible based on what happened in Mists of Pandaria, and that's even with a lot of people not liking the theme of Mists. Further to this, Legion is well positioned to make use of many of its game systems for future patches. Dungeons are now very extensible for the devs, since Mythic Plus scales to extremely high levels of reward and difficulty. Their profession revamp is being used as a platform to deliver more quest content to players through professions. World quests are also inherently extensible, and unlike Mists of Pandaria, Blizzard have said they intend to launch more dungeons throughout the expansion, and that's been a bit of a gripe with players that they haven't been doing that. It really does seem like they have a good plan for the post-launch support of Legion. It seems like that is a priority, especially given their admission that pushing for expansions on a yearly basis is unfeasible, damaging, and prone to leaving them caught with their pants down, as happened with Warlords. Of course, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. We'll need to see if they actually manage to stick to their word. Often they have said lots of very positive things and then completely failed on following up on them. With Warlords boosting the game up to 10 million, they had a great opportunity to retain those returning players and undo the damage of the initial Pandaria losses, but their mad rush to get Legion out of the gate quicker meant that by the time that success of Warlords launch actually happened, they weren't able to capitalize on it because half the team was already working on Legion. Hell, a lot of the Tanan stuff was done pretty much before Warlords came out, from what I gather. So with Legion, it would seem that they don't want to repeat that mistake again. And I don't think Legion will lead to a Warlords-size subscriber spike, but I do think it will lead to a large spike in returning players. Assuming the expansion doesn't fall prey to the initial fall-off of Mists, which I don't think it will, and avoids a Warlords of Draenor-like content drought, which the developers have said it won't, I can see Legion leaving World of Warcraft with a subscriber base that's a bit larger, less cyclical, and more healthy than it currently is. There are a few devil's advocate positions that I should probably bring up here. First of all, the MMO market is pretty much in a downturn, as is interest in Warcraft the MMO and Warcraft the IP. I see these things as factors which will decrease the scale of any successes, but I do think the core audience that's there is large enough for Blizzard to see growth over where we currently are. There is also the position that many players have taken in regard to the sub-drops, claiming that it's just a cyclical, inevitable thing. And I think they are partially correct, but that the cyclical nature of casual fans' interest is a smaller element of the overall subscribership losses than those people may think. Yes, there are people who hop into expansions for a few months and then leave again. However, in the 3 principal cases of this happening, i.e. Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, and Warlords of Draenor, there have been clear, common-sense explanations behind those rather extraordinary losses. Addressing this point is one of the main things I wanted to do in this video, because in doing so, it sort of shows that losing is not inevitable, and that Blizzard can actually succeed if they push the bar and don't mismanage their design decisions and project scheduling. Let's be real, there have been, controversies, there have been concerns, worries for every single expansion since Wrath of the Lich King. People were unhappy at, removing ICC 10 with Cataclysm and not really replacing it. People didn't particularly like the Dragon Soul tier. It also had a content drought. Mists of Pandaria, a lot of people didn't like the theme. It had a massive content drought. Warlords of Draenor, they made a pretty good initial package and then forgot to support it with decent patches. There are clear reasons for all of these things happening, so I think just saying, oh, it's cyclical, I don't really think that's giving Blizzard almost like the credit of their own mistakes, which I think they certainly, that deserves to be recognized. So, in conclusion, I think the sky is not falling. Indeed, I actually think it's looking pretty damn good for the game. Hopefully Legion does manage to follow up on all the stuff Blizzard have said it would. But that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you thought down in the comments or via Twitter, which is the best place to find me. And with that, I will see you next time.